Morning everyone, welcome back to the homestead. It is a beautiful, slightly snowy day. It's actually really nice. It's not snowing too much. I don't think we're supposed to get any accumulation out of this storm. It's just typical New Hampshire flurries blowing through. On today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit about our wood stove and why we choose to heat primarily with wood in the winter. It's not our only source of heat. We don't consider ourselves totally off grid in terms of heating, but we have a wood stove and we use that as our primary form of heat for most of the winter here at our place. So I want to just talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about our wood stove, the equipment that we're using, and a little bit of the I guess just the ins and outs of heating with wood, because not a lot of people do it in today's world. So yeah, let's do that today. First, we got to take care of the chickens and ducks. Frost-free hydrant is one of the best things you can have on the homestead. Being able to get water out of this puppy saved their butt on so many times when I thought we'd have to go inside and fill up a bucket in the kitchen sink. The chickens are in there and they're loving it. Now the ducks are going to come through and they're going to ruin the whole operation by dunking their head and splashing and swimming, and you can already hear them. It's so nice out here. I just kind of want to hang out and keep shooting footage of the falling snow. But there's work to do, which is part of heating your house with wood. I made the mistake of not having this pile covered up in that first snowstorm that we got this year, which is not a huge issue. The wood's already seasoned, but it is a little wet right now. So when we were running down the list of things we wanted on our homestead, a wood stove was right up there as one of the things that was a must-have, or at least the ability to put in a wood stove. So a chimney with a flue set up. And there's a bunch of practical reasons for that, living where we live. You guys see how much we lose power. You see the snowfall that we get. And it's great having a source of heat that is not dependent on electricity, is not dependent on somebody else. You know, we have 10 acres of forest on our property. We can go out and we can harvest our own wood during the summer. We can stack it all up and make sure it's seasoned and burn that wood as we need during the winter to stay warm. That's an all-nighter right there. That's a good one. But there's another side to wood heat besides the whole self-sufficiency and ability to be used without power part that's really important to us. And one of the big reasons that we burn wood is simply the feel and the comfort that you get from a wood stove versus other forms of heat. A wood stove puts off a form of radiant heat that is hard to get off of virtually anything else. You may get something similar off like an old steam radiate. But with a wood stove, there's a little bit something more than that to it. It's putting off a radiant heat, but it's giving you something to do. It's kind of keeping you more in tune with the temperature of the house and the process of getting the heat that you're looking for. I guess it's similar to growing a garden. You don't necessarily need to grow a garden. You can just go to the grocery store and get whatever food you want, and you can go to the store and buy your own meat instead of raising it. There's a process involved with this that really makes you think, and it extends from collecting the wood, bringing the wood in, splitting the wood, stacking the wood, to the finished product where, every single day, based on the temperature outside, what the weather's like, what the draft is like, if I've got a window open in the house, letting a little bit of air in, or if I've got it all sealed up tight because it's super cold out. Each fire is different, just like each tomato that you get from your garden's a little bit different. And I'm not trying to like wax poetic or be old fashioned or anything like that, but it's kind of a cool thing to be a little bit more in tune with keeping yourself warm. So this is our wood stove. It's an older Quadrifier. I believe the model's 2600. I'm not sure.
Samsonite. I was way off.
It's a plate steel stove lined with brick. It does have a cast iron door with the glass window on it. It's a pretty solid stove. It was included with the house when we bought it. Being older, I like that it's a non-catalytic stove. It doesn't have a catalytic converter in it, which all the modern stoves have these days. It's an EPA requirement that any wood stoves being sold new today do have to have catalytic converters in them, which essentially change some of the fumes coming out of the stove into less harmful gases. I don't have anything against the environment or anything like that, but modern wood stoves tend to be a little bit less efficient with those catalytic conversion systems. I know there's some studies out there that say, oh, they're more efficient or they can be more efficient. But in reality, you're talking about taking a little bit of the efficiency out of the stove and putting it into the catalysts that are in there and other things like that. I like a nice simple stove, something that can't go, nothing really can go wrong with this. It's fire brick lined, so it retains a lot of the heat. We can stoke this thing, probably around midnight before we go to bed, or, if I go to bed at 10, I'll wake up at midnight and stoke it before I head upstairs to go to sleep. And this thing will still be hot in the morning. It'll still have a nice bed of coals where you can shake things around a little bit, put a log on, and it's going to take right off on you. So basic controls on the wood stove, you've got your damper on the flue right there. That controls essentially the velocity of your draft coming out. Keep it wide open, you get a better draft. You burn, hotter and more quickly inside the firebox. Take it down a little bit, you keep more heat in the firebox, so you get a more thorough burn on whatever you've got in there. The difference being you just have to adjust a little bit for your oxygen draw or your fresh air, which is on the bottom here. This piece right here, right now it's full in because we just got this fire going a little bit ago, so I still want to feed as much oxygen as possible. When I close that off, you can actually see a little bit of a change in the flame because it's getting less oxygen. Really, you want to use this to control, again, how fast things burn, how hot things burn. You don't want your stove burning super hot all the time, but you don't want it burning super slow either, because that's when you get a smoldering fire that it builds up more creosote in your chimney. Chimney fires, as I'm sure you heard, are no good. At the very least, it puts your chimney or your chimney lining in jeopardy, and those are not cheap. At the worst, it can put your whole house in jeopardy, and it's not worth burning your house down just because you didn't want to pay somebody to clean your chimney out. The three other items you see up here on top of the wood stove are optional pieces. You don't need them if you're going to be using a wood stove for heat, but they either make life a little bit easier or a little bit more comfortable when you're using a wood stove for heat. The first, this is a Rutland burn indicator. It's simply a magnet, and I'm not going to touch it because it's hot right now, but it sits on your stovepipe and it lets you know approximately what the temperature is of the gases coming out. The reason that's important is, as I mentioned before, you don't want to have too hot of a fire and you don't want to have too cold of a fire. The problem with too hot of a fire is you can actually do damage to your chimney or the chimney lining. Stoves can get too hot, seams can crack. You want to have a steady, consistent burn, but you don't want it to be too hot. The problem with having a low temperature smoldering burn is that you're sending a lot of unburnt fuel up into your stovepipe and chimney, and that unburnt fuel in the form of gases can condense on the side of your chimney or stovepipe, and it builds up creosote. That creosote is extremely flammable. So if you have a whole bunch of low temperature smoldering fires and you build up a lot of creosote, and then you get a spark or an ember that goes up the chimney, it can land on that creosote and ignite it and cause a chimney fire. As I mentioned before, they're just no good all around. A good high quality burn indicator, like I said, ours is from Rutland. I'll leave links to all this stuff in the description down below. But this Rutland burn indicator is great. We've been using it for years, and I know based on just my experience with wood stoves and this thing that it is accurate. The next thing you'll see here is a cast iron steam pot. I think we got this from LL Bean, but there's other varieties out there. This is simple. You just fill it with water, and as it sits on the top of your wood stove, it steams. It's not for any efficiency of the wood stove or anything like that. It's just a comfort factor. Burning a wood stove, you do end up drawing a lot of moisture out of the air in your house. They act kind of as a passive dehumidifier. So by having just a steaming pot of water on the top, it creates a much more comfortable environment in your house when you're burning wood. You don't have to use a cast iron pot like this with a lid. This is just decorative, it's nice, but you can just take a regular pan or pot from your stove that you would cook in and set it on the top of the water, and it'll operate just fine. The nice thing about having a dedicated pot is that over time, deposits in the water, minerals and things like that, they'll tend to build up on the side. And if you're cooking with the potter pan, it's not very nice to have that. The last thing we have over here is a heat-powered fan, and this thing's pretty cool. It doesn't use any electricity at all from the house. It doesn't use any batteries. It actually has a plate in it that takes heat from the wood stove and turns it into electricity, and then uses that electricity to drive a fan, which is pretty cool. The fan, being that it's sitting on top of the wood stove, it has the ability to just circulate a little bit of warm air throughout the house. It doesn't even really, you don't even really feel a breeze coming off of it, but it provides just enough of a current of air that it makes a big difference in terms of the efficiency of the stove. There's a bunch of different designs of these. You can get them in a whole bunch of different layouts and patterns. Some people run multiples on their wood stove. We just have the one for our house. It works out just fine. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea what it's like to burn wood full time. It is a lot of work. It's not easy, but it does put you more in tune with what you're doing to heat your house. And personally, I think the fact that it's a renewable resource, we can regrow this wood, and we have plenty of wood on our property to heat us for years without extinguishing that resource. Combined with the fact that I just think it gives a better quality of heat overall, it's much more comfortable, and you get the bonus of being able to sit here and watch it like a caveman TV. I think if you have the ability to heat with wood, it's one of the ways to go. As always, thanks for watching, guys, and have a great day. Bye.